I clutched the lottery ticket with trembling fingers, staring at the numbers that had just made me $2 million richer. Racing home through our quiet, suburban neighborhood, my heart pounded with pure joy. I burst through the front door of the house I shared with my younger sister Diana, shouting her name with uncontainable excitement. She appeared at the top of our oak staircase, but instead of the smile I expected, her face contorted with something I had never seen before. Rage, pure venomous rage. Diana charged down those stairs like a woman possessed, and before I could even speak, she shoved me backward with terrifying force. My body tumbled down each unforgiving step. The sterile smell of disinfectant pulled me back to consciousness. White ceiling tiles swam into focus above my throbbing head, and the steady beep of machines created a rhythm that seemed to match the pounding in my skull. Every breath sent sharp pain through my ribs, and my left wrist felt like it had been crushed in a vice. "Take it easy, honey. You have been through quite an ordeal." A gentle voice belonging to a nurse with kind brown eyes came into view. Her name tag read Rachel, and she adjusted my pillow with practiced care. "What happened to me?" My voice came out as barely a whisper, my throat raw and scratchy. "You suffered severe head trauma, 3 broken ribs, and a fractured wrist. Your sister found you unconscious at the bottom of your stairs 3 days ago. The neighbors heard screaming and called for help." Rachel checked my IV drip while speaking in measured professional tones. 3 days. I had been unconscious for 3 entire days. The memory of Diana's furious expression flooded back, along with the sensation of falling through space. But before I could process everything, the hospital room door swung open with dramatic flair. "Itai, Babette." Oh, my poor, poor sister. Diana rushed toward my bed, tears streaming down her cheeks in what appeared to be genuine anguish. But something felt wrong about her performance. Her tears seemed too perfect, too rehearsed. "Diana, I need to tell you about the lottery ticket. I won $2 million, and then you—" "Shh, shh." Diana placed a finger to her lips, glancing nervously at Rachel. "You fell down the stairs, remember? You had been drinking again, and you lost your balance. The doctor says head injuries can cause confusion about what really happened." My stomach dropped. Drinking again, I rarely touched alcohol, maybe a glass of wine at Christmas. But Rachel nodded sympathetically, as if Diana had already explained my supposed drinking problem in great detail. Memory issues are extremely common with concussions. "This severe," said Dr. Martinez, a distinguished man in his 50s who had just entered the room. "Your sister has been very worried about your alcohol consumption lately. She mentioned you have been under significant stress from working 2 jobs." The room felt like it was spinning. Diana had constructed an entire narrative about my character, painting me as an unstable drunk who could not handle responsibility. But as she leaned over to hug me with fake concern, I noticed something that made my blood turn cold. Around her neck hung a diamond necklace I had never seen before. Her wrist displayed a gold Rolex that cost more than I made in 6 months of serving tables at Murphy's Diner and cleaning offices until midnight. Her designer handbag probably cost $3,000, and her clothes looked like they came straight from an expensive boutique. Diana had been unemployed for 8 months, claiming she needed to focus on her college studies. I had been supporting both of us on my meager wages, stretching every dollar to keep food on the table and the mortgage paid. Where had this sudden wealth come from? "I love your necklace," I said, carefully watching her reaction. Her hand flew to her throat defensively. "This old thing, I have had it for years. You just never noticed before because of your condition." More lies. I knew every piece of jewelry Diana owned because I had helped her organize her room countless times. This necklace had definitely not existed a week ago. Rachel and Dr. Martinez exchanged glances clearly, buying into Diana's fabricated story about my mental state. They saw a concerned sister caring for a troubled sibling, not realizing they were witnessing an elaborate deception. "I need some fresh air," Diana announced, stepping toward the doorway. "This has been so emotionally draining." As she reached the entrance, another figure appeared that made my heart stop completely. Jake, my husband of 4 years, walked into the room holding Diana's hand, not like a brother-in-law comforting his wife's sister during a crisis. Their fingers were interlaced intimately, romantically, possessively. They both looked at me lying broken and helpless in that hospital bed, and they began to laugh, not nervous chuckles or stress relief. Deep, cruel laughter that echoed off the sterile walls like a nightmare soundtrack. "Well, well," Jake said with a smirk I had never seen before. "Look who finally decided to wake up. Diana told me about your little tumble down the stairs." "Jake, what is going on? Why are you holding her hand like that?" "Oh, Babette." His voice dripped with condescension. "You always were too naive to see what was right in front of your face. Diana and I have been together for months. We were just waiting for the right moment to tell you." "You got what you deserved," Diana added with venom that shocked me to my core. "Always acting like you are so much better than everyone else, always the responsible one, always the martyr, working your little jobs to support poor Diana. Well, guess what? Your selfishness with money finally caught up with you." The machines monitoring my vital signs began beeping frantically as my heart rate spiked. Rachel rushed to my side, but I barely noticed her presence. The two people I had trusted most in the world, the sister I had raised after our parents died, and the husband I had loved unconditionally, had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. But worse than their affair was the dawning realization that this had not been an accident. Diana had not pushed me in a moment of rage about the lottery winnings. This had been planned, calculated, deliberate. They had been waiting for me to come into money, and then they had tried to eliminate me. As Jake and Diana walked out of my hospital room together, their laughter still ringing in the air, I made a silent promise to myself. They thought they had destroyed me, but they had only awakened something fierce and determined that I never knew existed. This was not over. Not by a long shot. Recovery became my battlefield, and I approached it with the strategic mind of a general planning a campaign. Every day in that hospital bed, I gathered intelligence while pretending to be confused and defeated. My phone, miraculously undamaged in the fall, became my secret weapon. The first piece of evidence came from Connor, my physical therapist. He was a former college athlete with sharp eyes and an intuitive understanding of human nature that made him notice details others missed. "Your sister's story does not add up," he whispered during our morning session, helping me regain strength in my injured wrist. I have treated hundreds of fall victims, and your injuries show impact patterns inconsistent with tumbling downstairs while intoxicated. These look more like you were pushed with significant force. Connor had grown up in a household with domestic violence, and he recognized the signs that medical professionals often overlooked. He began documenting everything, taking photographs of my healing bruises and noting inconsistencies in Diana's various versions of events. But the real breakthrough came when I started investigating my own finances from my hospital bed. Using the mobile banking app on my phone, I discovered that Diana had somehow gained access to my checking and savings accounts. Over the past 6 months, she had been making systematic withdrawals that totaled nearly $8,000. The largest withdrawal had occurred the day before my accident. $5,000 removed at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon. I remembered that time clearly because I had been at Murphy's Diner serving the dinner rush crowd. Diana had known I would be working, giving her the perfect opportunity to steal my money while planning my destruction. Patrick, the security guard at the office building where I cleaned, provided another crucial piece of the puzzle. When I called him from the hospital, he revealed information that sent chills down my spine. Your sister had been coming by the building for weeks, Babette. She had your keys and was going through your locker in the janitorial supply room. I thought it was strange, but she said you had asked her to pick up some things for you. She seemed to know exactly what she was looking for. Diana had been systematically preparing for this moment, learning my routines, accessing my workplace, and setting up her story about my supposed drinking problem. The premeditation was breathtaking in its calculated cruelty. Mrs. Henderson, our 78-year-old neighbor, provided the final piece of damning testimony when she visited me in the hospital. Her arthritis kept her awake most nights, and she often sat by her bedroom window that faced our house. I heard angry voices that evening, dear. Your sister was shouting about money and fairness, saying something about how she deserved better treatment. Then I heard the most awful commotion, like furniture being thrown around. When everything went quiet, I almost called the police, but then I saw your sister come outside to check the mailbox, acting perfectly calm. The timeline Mrs. Henderson described proved that Diana had not simply found me unconscious after an accident. She had been in the house during my fall, and her behavior afterward showed no signs of panic or concern that would be natural for someone who had just discovered a family member seriously injured. But the most devastating evidence came from an unexpected source. Our home security system, installed 2 years earlier after a break-in on our street, had been recording everything. Diana thought she was too clever to get caught, but she had forgotten about the cameras. I accessed the security footage through my phone, using the app that controlled our system. What I saw made my hands shake so violently that I nearly dropped the device. The video showed Diana and Jake in our living room, the night before my fall, hunched over the coffee table with papers spread between them. The audio was crystal clear, capturing every word of their conspiracy. When she wins big from one of those lottery tickets, she is always buying "We Make Our Move." Diana was saying, her voice filled with cold calculation. An accident down the stairs, just tragic enough to put her in the hospital for a while. Maybe some memory problems from a head injury. Then we can access everything while she recovers. What if she remembers what really happened? Jake asked, his voice showing the first trace of nervousness. Who will believe her? I have been laying the groundwork for weeks, telling everyone about her drinking problem and her erratic behavior at work. By the time she gets out of the hospital, her credibility will be completely destroyed. They had spent months orchestrating my downfall, waiting patiently for the right moment to strike. The lottery win had simply been the trigger they needed to put their plan into motion. They had not just tried to rob me, they had tried to systematically destroy my life, my reputation, and my sanity. As I watched the footage of them laughing and planning my destruction, something hardened inside my chest like cooling steel. They had underestimated me, completely assuming that sweet, hard-working Babette would be too broken to fight back. But they were about to learn that sometimes the quietest people carry the deepest strength, and that pushing someone past their breaking point can awaken a force more powerful than they ever imagined. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was becoming the architect of their downfall. Sarah Williams walked into my hospital room like justice incarnate, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes blazing with the kind of righteous anger that had built her reputation as the most feared family law attorney in the county. She specialized in financial crimes between relatives, having seen every form of betrayal imaginable during her 30-year career. "I have reviewed the evidence you gathered," she said without preamble, setting her leather briefcase on the bedside table. "This is one of the most calculated cases of family destruction I have ever encountered. We are not just talking about theft here, Babette. This is attempted murder disguised as an accident." Sarah had taken my case pro bono after Connor contacted her on my behalf. She had built her practice on protecting victims of family financial abuse, and my situation represented everything she had dedicated her career to fighting against. "I am bringing in Marcus Johnson, a private investigator who used to work homicide for the state police. If there are more crimes buried in your sister's past, Marcus will find them." Marcus arrived that afternoon, a methodical man in his 50s with the patient demeanor of someone who had spent decades unraveling lies. His investigation into Diana's background revealed a pattern of deception that went far deeper than I had imagined. "Your sister has been committing identity theft using your personal information for over 2 years. Marcus explained, spreading documents across my hospital tray table. "She opened 7 credit cards in your name, maxing out each one before moving to the next. The total fraudulent debt attributed to you is currently $43,000. My stomach lurched as he showed me copies of applications bearing my forged signature. Diana had been systematically destroying my credit rating while building a secret life funded by stolen money. But Marcus was just getting started with his revelations. The jewelry and expensive clothes she was wearing purchased with credit cards opened in your name. But that is not the worst part. We ran a background check on your husband, Jake, and discovered he has been married to another woman in Nevada for 2 years. His marriage to you is completely invalid under federal bigamy laws." The room seemed to tilt sideways as this information sank in. Not only had Jake been cheating with my sister, but our entire marriage had been a lie from the beginning. He had used me for housing and financial support, while maintaining another family across the country. "There is more," Marcus continued grimly. Diana has been selling items from your house systematically. The antique furniture your grandmother left you, your mother's jewelry collection, even some of your father's tools from the garage. We traced the sales to various pawnshops and estate dealers around the city. Sarah leaned forward, her expression growing darker. We are filing criminal charges for attempted murder, conspiracy, identity theft fraud, and theft of inheritance property. But I want to dig deeper. Criminals like Diana do not usually start with something this elaborate. There are probably other victims. Dr. Elizabeth Foster, the toxicologist Sarah had brought in, provided the most shocking revelation yet. She had been analyzing hair samples and blood work that Dr. Martinez had authorized for additional testing. Babette, we found traces of arsenic in your hair that indicate slow systematic poisoning over approximately 4 months. Dr. Foster announced with clinical precision that could not hide her obvious horror. Someone has been giving you small doses of rat poison, probably in your food or drinks, causing the mysterious illnesses you experienced recently. The memory of those unexplained sick days rushed back with terrifying clarity. Stomach problems that left me weak and nauseated headaches that made it difficult to concentrate at work, fatigue that Diana had attributed to my demanding schedule. She had been slowly poisoning me while setting up her story about my supposed mental instability. The dosage was carefully calculated, Dr. Foster continued. Not enough to kill you immediately, but sufficient to make you appear ill and unreliable to others. Combined with her stories about your drinking, she was creating a portrait of someone whose death from an accidental fall would seem tragically inevitable. Sarah's face had gone pale with fury. This was not just attempted murder, Babette. This was premeditated, systematic murder with an extended timeline. Diana was planning to kill you slowly and inherit everything but the lottery win accelerated her timeline. Marcus had been quietly taking notes during Dr. Foster's presentation, and now he looked up with grim satisfaction. This gives us grounds to request an investigation into any other unexplained deaths in Diana's circle. I want to examine what happened to your Aunt Grace 2 years ago. Aunt Grace had died suddenly of what appeared to be a heart attack, leaving Diana a modest inheritance of $15,000. At the time, it had seemed like a blessing that helped Diana pay for college expenses. But now, with the knowledge that Diana was capable of murder by poison, Grace's death took on a sinister new meaning. We need to exhume Grace's body for toxicology testing, Sarah announced with determination. If Diana killed her too, we can establish a pattern that will ensure she never sees freedom again. As the legal team prepared to leave, Sarah turned back to me with an expression of fierce protectiveness that reminded me why she had earned her reputation. Diana thinks she has destroyed you, but she made 2 critical errors. First, she underestimated your intelligence and determination. Second, she got greedy and moved too fast with the lottery money. If she had been patient and continued the slow poisoning, she might have succeeded, but her impatience is going to be her downfall. That evening, as I lay in my hospital bed, processing the full scope of Diana's crimes, I realized that my sister was not just a thief or even just a would-be murderer. She was a predator who had been systematically hunting her own family members, using love and trust as weapons to destroy the people closest to her. But now I had an army of professionals dedicated to exposing her crimes and bringing her to justice. The frightened, broken woman who had awakened in this hospital bed a week ago no longer existed. In her place was someone harder, smarter, and absolutely committed to ensuring that Diana would pay for every act of betrayal she had committed. FBI agent Linda Torres arrived at my hospital room on a rainy Tuesday morning, her federal credentials and serious demeanor transforming my private medical space into the center of a major criminal investigation. She was a seasoned professional who specialized in interstate fraud cases, and Jake's bigamy had triggered federal jurisdiction. Mrs. Babette, your case has revealed connections to criminal activity across multiple states. Agent Torres explained, settling into the chair beside my bed with the confidence of someone accustomed to handling complex investigations. When we ran comprehensive background checks on Jake and Diana, we discovered a network of fraud that extends far beyond what happened to you. Marcus had been working closely with the FBI, and his investigation had uncovered evidence that Diana had been running sophisticated insurance scams for years. She would stage minor accidents in parking lots, claim injuries that required expensive medical treatment, and collect settlements from insurance companies who found it cheaper to pay than to fight questionable claims. We have identified at least 12 separate insurance fraud incidents over the past 3 years. Agent Torres continued consulting her notes with practiced efficiency. Diana would research potential targets, usually elderly drivers, in parking lots of grocery stores or shopping centers. She would deliberately cause minor collisions, then claim soft tissue injuries that are difficult to disprove. The total amount Diana had stolen through these schemes approached $100,000 money she had been hiding in offshore accounts that Jake helped her establish through his contacts in Nevada. They had been building a substantial nest egg while I struggled to pay our household expenses with my 2 minimum wage jobs. But the most devastating revelation came when Agent Torres explained what they had discovered about our Aunt Grace's death 2 years earlier. We exhumed Grace's body yesterday, and Dr. Foster's toxicology analysis confirmed massive levels of arsenic in her remains. Agent Torres announced with the clinical detachment that law enforcement professionals use to discuss unspeakable crimes. Based on the concentration levels, Grace was poisoned with approximately 10 times the dosage Diana was giving you. She died within hours of ingesting the final dose. The method had been simpler with Grace. Diana had visited her elderly aunt's apartment with homemade cookies laced with enough rat poison to cause what appeared to be a sudden heart attack. Grace's death had been ruled natural because she was 82 years old with a history of cardiac problems. Diana inherited $15,000 from Grace, plus some valuable antique jewelry that she sold immediately, Agent Torres explained. But more importantly, Grace's death gave Diana confidence that she could commit murder without detection. It was practice for what she planned to do to you. Marcus had been investigating Jake's activities in Nevada, where his other wife, Anna, came from a wealthy family, involved in legitimate businesses that Jake had been systematically exploiting. He had been blackmailing Anna's relatives by threatening to expose minor tax irregularities unless they provided him with substantial cash payments. Jake has been operating a complex extortion scheme against his Nevada in-laws for 18 months, Marcus reported during his afternoon visit. He would discover small financial discrepancies in their business records, then demand increasingly large payments to keep quiet. The family has paid him nearly $60,000 to avoid what they believed would be criminal charges. But the most psychologically disturbing discovery came from Agent Torres's analysis of Diana's online activities. Using sophisticated digital forensics, they had uncovered an extensive campaign of character assassination that Diana had been conducting against me for months. Your sister created multiple fake social media accounts, using variations of your name and personal information. Agent Torres explained, handing me printed screenshots that made my blood run cold. She posted content designed to make you appear unstable, violent, and unreliable. She sent threatening messages to your former coworkers, created fake dating profiles, showing you as promiscuous and dishonest, and even posted reviews on business websites claiming you had stolen money from employers. The scope of Diana's campaign to destroy my reputation was breathtaking. She had systematically contacted everyone in my past, spreading lies designed to isolate me and make my eventual death appear to be the tragic but inevitable result of a troubled person's self-destructive behavior. The goal was complete character assassination. Agent Torres continued, if you had died from the arsenic poisoning or the fall down the stairs, everyone who knew you would have believed it was either suicide or the result of your supposed drinking and mental health problems. Diana was not just planning to kill you, Babette. She was planning to erase your very identity. Dr. Foster had been analyzing the pattern of arsenic dosages in my hair samples, and her findings revealed the calculated precision of Diana's murder plan. The poisoning began approximately 6 months ago with tiny doses that would have caused mild digestive issues, Dr. Foster explained. Diana gradually increased the amount to create the appearance of declining health. Based on the progression, you would have died from apparent natural causes within another 2 months if the lottery win had not accelerated her timeline. Jake's role in the poisoning had been to distract me during meals, keeping me engaged in conversation, while Diana added the arsenic to my food or drinks. He would insist we eat dinner together as a family, creating opportunities for Diana to poison me while maintaining plausible deniability about his own involvement. Agent Torres concluded the meeting with information that filled me with cold fury. We have evidence that Diana has been researching how to fake her own death and assume a new identity. She purchased fake identification documents from a contact in Mexico and had been planning to disappear with the money from your lottery win. The attack on you was meant to be the final step before she vanished forever, leaving Jake to inherit your assets as your legal husband. As the investigators left that evening, I understood that Diana had not simply tried to steal my lottery winnings. She had orchestrated an elaborate multi-year plan to systematically destroy my life, my reputation, my health, and ultimately, my existence itself. She had wanted to consume everything I was and everything I owned, leaving no trace that I had ever mattered to anyone. But her meticulous planning had been built on one fundamental miscalculation. She had assumed that I would remain passive and trusting until the very end, never suspecting the depths of her hatred or the scope of her crimes. She had not considered that her own greed and impatience would provide the evidence needed to expose everything. Now with federal agents and a team of legal professionals working to unravel her criminal empire, Diana was about to discover that her greatest mistake had been underestimating the quiet strength that sometimes lies dormant in the people others perceive as weak. Diana's world began crumbling on a Thursday morning when Agent Torres appeared at her door with a federal search warrant. I watched the arrest from my hospital window, finally strong enough to move around with the help of a walker. The sight of my sister being led away in handcuffs should have brought satisfaction, but instead I felt only cold determination to see justice completed. She made bail within 6 hours, using money stolen from my accounts and assets liquidated from her various fraud schemes. But freedom only made Diana more dangerous, and she began acting with the desperate recklessness of someone who had nothing left to lose. The first sign of escalation came when Connor received threatening phone calls at his apartment, warning him to stop cooperating with my legal team or face serious consequences. Diana had somehow obtained his personal information and was attempting to intimidate the witnesses who could testify against her. She called me at 3 a.m, Connor reported to Agent Torres during a meeting in my hospital room. She said she knew where I worked out, where I bought my groceries, and what time I got home every evening. The message was clear: withdraw your support for Babette, or something bad will happen to you. Mrs. Henderson received similar threats, but she refused to be intimidated by Diana's tactics. The elderly woman had survived the Great Depression and World War II, and she was not about to be frightened by what she called a spoiled young woman having a tantrum. I told her that threatening an old lady was probably not the smartest thing she could do. Mrs. Henderson informed Agent Torres with the kind of steel that comes from 8 decades of facing life's challenges. I also told her that I had already given my statement to the police, and threatening me now would only add more charges to her collection. But Diana's desperate attempts to silence witnesses escalated dramatically when she broke into the hospital one night, making it past security by using stolen scrubs and a fake identification badge. Security cameras captured her moving through the corridors toward my room at 2:30 a.m, carrying what appeared to be a syringe filled with some unknown substance. Only the quick thinking of the night shift nurse prevented Diana from reaching me. Nurse Jennifer had been warned about potential threats and immediately recognized Diana from photos provided by hospital security. She triggered the alarm system and locked down the entire wing before Diana could complete whatever she had planned. She was carrying enough insulin to kill a diabetic elephant, Dr. Martinez explained the next morning after Diana's arrest for breaking and entering. Combined with your current medical condition, that injection would have caused immediate cardiac arrest. There would have been no way to trace the cause of death without knowing specifically what to look for. Diana's bail was revoked, but Jake remained free and continued her campaign of intimidation from outside. He attempted to break into Sarah Williams's law office, looking for files related to my case. When that failed, he began following Marcus Johnson, apparently trying to discover what additional evidence the investigation had uncovered. The situation reached a terrifying climax when Jake, growing increasingly desperate as the federal investigation closed in around him, decided to target someone whose vulnerability would force me to abandon the prosecution. On a Monday afternoon, while I was undergoing physical therapy, with Connor, Agent Torres received a panicked phone call from Sarah Williams. Jake has kidnapped my daughter, Emma. Sarah announced, her professional composure cracking under the weight of a mother's terror. He called my office demanding that all charges against Diana be dropped immediately, or Emma will disappear forever. Emma Williams was 16 years old, an honor student who had been walking home from school when Jake approached her in the parking lot. He had convinced her that her mother had sent him to pick her up due to an emergency, then driven her to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. He wants to negotiate, Agent Torres explained as she coordinated with local police and FBI tactical teams. Jake believes he can trade Emma's safety for Diana's freedom, but he does not understand that kidnapping a minor has made this a federal case with mandatory life sentences. The manhunt for Jake and Emma dominated local news coverage, transforming my personal story of family betrayal into a high-profile criminal case that captured regional attention. The media attention brought additional witnesses forward, including other victims of Diana's insurance fraud schemes who had been afraid to report their experiences until now. But the most dramatic development came when FBI computer specialists analyzed Jake's digital communications and discovered evidence that Diana had been planning to fake her own death and flee to Mexico with a completely fabricated identity. She had been building this new identity for over a year. Agent Torres revealed during an emergency meeting in my hospital room. Fake birth certificate, social security number passport, even manufactured work history and school records. She planned to become someone named Maria Gonzalez and disappear into Mexico City, where we would never be able to find her. Diana had been methodically planning her escape, while systematically poisoning me, creating the perfect crime that would leave no surviving witnesses and no one to question. Her sudden departure from the country after inheriting my estate. The lottery win forced her to accelerate everything. Agent Torres continued. Instead of waiting months for the arsenic to kill you slowly, she decided to stage an accident and collect the money immediately. Her impatience and greed destroyed years of careful planning. As Emma's rescue operation unfolded throughout the afternoon, I realized that Jake and Diana's desperation had revealed the true scope of their criminal partnership. They had been planning to destroy my life and disappear with millions of dollars, leaving behind a trail of fraud victims and family members who would never know the truth about how they had died. But their overconfidence and greed had created the evidence needed to expose everything, and now they faced the prospect of spending the rest of their lives in federal prison for crimes that extended far beyond what they had done to me personally. Emma Williams was rescued unharmed after a 6-hour manhunt that ended with Jake's capture in an abandoned grain elevator outside the city limits. His desperate gambit to trade hostages for Diana's freedom had only added federal kidnapping charges to an already overwhelming list of crimes. The rescue marked the beginning of the end for my sister's criminal empire. The trial began on a crisp October morning, 3 months after my fall down the stairs. I had recovered most of my physical strength through intense rehabilitation, but the emotional scars ran deeper than any broken bones. Walking into that courthouse, I carried the weight of betrayal that had shattered every assumption I had ever made about family loyalty and unconditional love. The media attention surrounding the case had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. What started as a simple lottery dispute had evolved into a sensational story involving murder, bigamy insurance, fraud, kidnapping, and interstate criminal conspiracy. News vans lined the courthouse steps, and reporters shouted questions as Sarah Williams guided me through the crowd toward the main entrance. Diana sat at the defendant's table wearing an orange jumpsuit that replaced the expensive designer clothes purchased with my stolen money. Her hair had grown stringy during months of incarceration, and her face showed the hollow-eyed desperation of someone who finally understood that her carefully constructed world of lies was collapsing. Jake had negotiated a plea agreement in exchange for testifying against Diana, but his cooperation came with its own price. He would serve 25 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, bigamy, and kidnapping, ensuring that he would be an old man before breathing free air again. The prosecution's case unfolded methodically over 5 days, with witness after witness describing the systematic nature of Diana's crimes. Connor testified about the inconsistencies in my injuries that first alerted him to foul play. Mrs. Henderson described the angry voices she had heard on the night of my attack. Patrick, the security guard, explained how Diana had been accessing my workplace for weeks before the assault. Dr. Foster's testimony about the arsenic poisoning sent visible shockwaves through the courtroom. The jury's faces reflected horror as she described how Diana had been slowly murdering me over months while maintaining the facade of a loving sister concerned about my well-being. Agent Torres presented evidence of Diana's elaborate identity theft schemes, insurance fraud operations, and the fake identity she had created for her planned escape to Mexico. The scope of criminal activity revealed a calculating predator who had been victimizing people for years while hiding behind a mask of innocence. But the most damaging testimony came from Jake himself, who had decided to save what remained of his own life by exposing every detail of Diana's criminal planning. Diana approached me about 18 months ago with a plan to eliminate Babette and inherit everything, Jake testified, with the flat affect of someone who had surrendered any pretense of human decency. She had already started the arsenic poisoning, but wanted to make sure she had legal access to all assets through my marriage to Babette. He described their relationship as purely transactional, with Diana offering him sexual favors and a share of my inheritance in exchange for his participation in murder. They had practiced the conversation they would have with hospital staff, rehearsing their story about my supposed drinking problem and accidental fall. Diana told me that family members killing each other for money was as old as human civilization. Jake continued, his voice devoid of any emotion or remorse. She said Babette was too naive to survive in a world where only strong people prospered, and that we were just helping natural selection along. When Diana took the stand in her own defense, her attorney attempted to portray her as a troubled young woman who had suffered psychological damage from losing her parents at an early age. They argued that her crimes were the result of mental illness and childhood trauma that had left her unable to form healthy relationships. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Diana's lawyer pleaded during his opening statement, my client lost her mother and father when she was only 19 years old. She has been struggling with depression, anxiety, and abandonment issues that clouded her judgment and led to these tragic decisions. But Diana's performance on the witness stand revealed a cold, calculating intelligence that undermined any claim of mental incapacity. She answered questions with precise recollection of dates amounts and criminal procedures that demonstrated careful planning rather than emotional instability. I never meant for Babette to get seriously hurt. Diana testified her voice, carrying just enough tremor to suggest vulnerability. The fall down the stairs was supposed to be minor, just enough to disorient her, while we sorted out the money situation. Everything got out of control because she resisted more than we expected. Sarah Williams destroyed Diana's credibility during cross-examination, methodically exposing the contradictions in her testimony and the calculated nature of her crimes. You purchased rat poison 3 weeks before attacking your sister, did you not? Sarah asked, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. I do not remember. You researched lethal dosages of arsenic on your computer for 2 months before beginning the poisoning, correct? That was just curiosity. You opened 7 credit cards in your sister's name while slowly poisoning her with arsenic. Is that accurate? I needed money for college. And you murdered your Aunt Grace using the same poison you were giving your sister, did you not? Diana's composure finally cracked. That was different. Grace was old and sick anyway. I was just helping her along. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs as Diana accidentally confessed to murdering our aunt, destroying any remaining sympathy the jury might have felt for her circumstances. But the dramatic climax came during the final day of testimony, when Sarah Williams called her surprise witness to the stand. I had been wondering why she seemed so confident about the outcome and why Agent Torres had been making mysterious phone calls throughout the trial. The prosecution calls David Lancaster to the stand. David Lancaster was a forensic accountant who had been working with the FBI to trace the full scope of Diana's financial crimes. He was a soft-spoken man in his 40s who specialized in complex fraud investigations, and his appearance sent Diana into immediate panic. As David approached the witness stand, Diana shot to her feet, despite her attorney's attempts to restrain her. "Oh my God, it's the accountant who knows everything," she screamed, her voice filled with the kind of terror that comes from realizing that absolute exposure is inevitable. David had been secretly investigating Diana's crimes for months, tracing financial transactions and digital records that revealed criminal activity extending back 15 years. His investigation had uncovered evidence that Diana had murdered our parents when she was only 18 years old. The defendant's parents died in what appeared to be an accidental car crash when she was 18. David testified with clinical precision. However, forensic analysis of the vehicle revealed that the brake lines had been deliberately cut with a sharp instrument. The insurance payout from their deaths was $200,000, which Diana inherited as the surviving next of kin. The courtroom fell silent as the full scope of Diana's criminal career became clear. She had been murdering family members for money since she was a teenager, perfecting her techniques over years of practice before setting her sights on me as her ultimate target. Diana collapsed in her chair, her face pale with the realization that every crime she had ever committed was being exposed in excruciating detail. Her carefully constructed defense strategy had crumbled completely, and she now faced multiple life sentences for a criminal career that spanned more than a decade. As David continued his testimony describing bank accounts, insurance policies, and digital evidence that connected Diana to fraud victims across multiple states, I finally understood the true magnitude of what I had survived. My sister was not just a sibling who had turned against me in a moment of greed. She was a serial killer who had been hunting her own family members for years, using love and trust as weapons to destroy the people who cared about her most. The trial concluded with closing arguments that painted Diana as a predator who had betrayed the most fundamental bonds of human relationship. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. But more important than the legal victory was the sense of vindication that came from exposing the truth about Diana's crimes. For years, she had been the favored sister, the one everyone worried about and protected, while I worked quietly to support our family. Now the world could see exactly who she really was, and justice would ensure she could never hurt anyone again. The gavel fell with a finality that echoed through the packed courtroom, sealing Diana's fate with 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. As the bailiff led her away in shackles, she turned back toward me. One final time, her eyes filled not with remorse, but with pure hatred for the sister who had dared to survive her murder attempts. Jake received 25 years in federal prison for his role in the conspiracy, a sentence that ensured he would be an old man before ever tasting freedom again. The judge's words during sentencing captured the moral horror of their crimes. You violated the most sacred bonds of family and marriage, turning love into a weapon for personal gain. But the legal victory was only the beginning of my journey back to life. The FBI's investigation had recovered most of the money Diana and Jake had stolen through their various fraud schemes, and the civil court awarded me additional damages that brought my total settlement to $3.8 million. Sarah Williams helped me establish a foundation dedicated to supporting victims of family financial abuse, using a substantial portion of the settlement to create resources for people who had suffered similar betrayals. The Babette Grace Foundation, named in honor of both myself and our murdered aunt, became my way of transforming personal trauma into meaningful help for others. The foundation provided legal assistance counseling services and emergency financial support for victims of crimes committed by family members. Too many people suffered in silence when relatives stole their money or destroyed their credit, feeling ashamed to admit that the people they trusted most had betrayed them completely. My own recovery required returning to college at 28, pursuing a degree in criminal justice that would allow me to understand the legal system that had saved my life. The knowledge I gained studying forensic accounting, criminal psychology, and victim advocacy gave me tools to help other people navigate similar betrayals. Connor and I had grown close during my recovery process, our relationship built on the foundation of shared struggle and mutual respect that had developed during my darkest hours. He understood trauma in ways that most people never could, having grown up with domestic violence that taught him to recognize danger signals others missed. "You are the strongest person I have ever met," he told me one evening as we walked through the park where I had once jogged before Diana began poisoning me. Most people would have been destroyed by what you went through, but you turned it into a way to help other people. Our relationship developed slowly, carefully, with both of us understanding that trust must be earned through consistent actions rather than pretty words. When Connor proposed 18 months after the trial ended, he did so not with expensive jewelry, but with a simple promise to build a life based on honesty, respect, and genuine partnership. We purchased a house in a quiet neighborhood across town, far from the memories that haunted the home I had shared with Diana and Jake. The new place represented a fresh beginning with a garden where I could grow vegetables and a home office where I could manage foundation business while continuing my studies. 1 year after Diana's sentencing, I made a decision that some people found strange, but that gave me a sense of complete closure. I visited her in prison, not to forgive or reconcile, but to demonstrate that I had not only survived her attempts to destroy me, but had thrived beyond anything she could have imagined. Diana looked older than her 26 years, her face marked by the stress of prison life and the knowledge that she would never again experience freedom. She sat across from me in the visiting room, separated by reinforced glass, that seemed symbolic of the barrier she had created between herself and the rest of humanity. "You think you won, but you just got lucky," she said through the telephone that connected us, her voice carrying the same venom that had poisoned our relationship for years. "I did not get lucky, Diana. I got justice, and more importantly, I learned that real family is not determined by blood relations. Real family is chosen through love, trust, and mutual respect. You never understood that, and that is why you are sitting in a cage while I am living a life filled with people who genuinely care about me." I told her about the foundation, about my upcoming marriage to Connor, about the college degree I was earning, and the meaningful work I was doing to help other victims. With each accomplishment I described, her face grew darker with the realization that her attempts to destroy me had only made me stronger. "The difference between us, Diana, is that you thought destroying other people would make you happy. I discovered that helping other people heal is what brings real satisfaction. You will spend the rest of your life surrounded by walls and guards, while I will spend mine surrounded by love and purpose." As I left the prison that day, walking into bright sunshine toward Connor's car, I felt the final weight of Diana's influence lift from my shoulders. She had stolen my money, poisoned my body, and betrayed my trust, but she had not succeeded in destroying my spirit or my capacity to build a meaningful life. The lottery ticket that started everything had been worth $2 million, but the real treasure I discovered was the strength that comes from refusing to be defined by other people's cruelty. Diana had tried to make me into a victim, but I chose to become a survivor who could help others find their own path to healing. The foundation continued to grow, helping hundreds of people rebuild their lives after financial abuse by family members. Each success story reminded me that Diana's greatest failure was not understanding that love and trust, when freely given and honestly earned, create bonds stronger than any damage that hatred can inflict. Connor and I were married in a small ceremony, surrounded by the people who had helped me through the darkest period of my life. Sarah Williams' agent, Torres Connor's family, Mrs. Henderson, and the friends I had made through my foundation work, It was a celebration not just of our love, but of the community that had formed around the principles of honesty, loyalty, and genuine care for one another. As we exchanged vows promising to build our marriage on transparency and mutual respect, I thought about how different my life had become from what Diana had planned for me. Instead of being a murder victim forgotten by history, I had become someone who could make a difference in the world by helping others heal from similar betrayals. The girl who had once worked 2 minimum-wage jobs to support an ungrateful sister was gone forever, replaced by a woman who understood her own worth and refused to accept less than she deserved from the people in her life. Diana had unwittingly given me the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that I was strong enough to survive anything and wise enough to build something meaningful from even the deepest pain. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was living a secret life that included plans to destroy you? How did you find the strength to fight back when everything you believed about family loyalty turned out to be an illusion? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own struggles with family betrayal, please consider hitting the like button to help other people find these stories of survival and transformation. Subscribe to this channel for more true stories about ordinary people who found extraordinary strength in their darkest moments, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear that it is possible to rebuild your life even after the worst betrayals. Thank you for taking this journey with me and for believing that justice and healing are possible even when everything seems lost. Remember that your story is still being written, and no matter what challenges you are facing today, you have the power to create a tomorrow filled with purpose, love, and genuine happiness.